Terry Foy, CEO of Inside Lacrosse, to talk some lax now for the next 10 minutes or so. Terry, exciting time of year. Conference tournaments getting started today. Syracuse gets things going tomorrow in the ACC tournament. I would assume that this is probably your favorite time of the year, right?
Not only is this my favorite time of year, today is literally my favorite day of the year, because one of the things that people complain about with lacrosse so often is that the games are really concentrated at noon and 1 p.m. on Saturday. And so since we don't get these, all day long windows the way you do with college football or the NFL, today is really one of the few days where, we've got the first game's already over. It started at 11 a.m. and Richmond beat UMass, and it goes until we have the Big East semifinal nightcap that starts at 9 p.m. Eastern time out there in Denver. So it's an unbelievable action-packed day of lacrosse. Every game has stakes. It's a lot of teams that you haven't seen a ton over the course of the year, so you learn something, and it's just nonstop action.
All right, let's talk about a team that you have seen quite a bit throughout the year, and that is Syracuse, and the predicament that they find themselves in. They end the season on a losing streak. They fall from what could have been the number 1 seed in the ACC had they beaten North Carolina to now the number 4 seed. Let's hypothetically say they lose this game tomorrow to Notre Dame. Are they still getting in the NCAA tournament?
Well, obviously, they've taken a lot out of their own control in that circumstance. And I think the most important factors are they need to make sure that Yale doesn't win the Ivy League and Rutgers doesn't win the Big Ten. As long as those two factors are in place, the other two that are kind of in contention would be Army with the Patriot League and Richmond with the A-10. And in those instances, they want to make sure that those teams do win. And if all that comes to pass, yes, Syracuse will be in the NCAA tournament. What's really unique about the way these resumes line up relative to prior years is there's a pretty bright line between the 8th best resume and then the next best resume. And I would say that right now, that next best team, the first team out, is Michigan. Their season's already over. They're 7-7, and I don't think you're going to hear anybody clamoring for them to get in. Meanwhile, Syracuse finds themselves in a group, I think, alongside Duke and Harvard, where right now they are all in, assuming that everything goes according to plan. But like I said, they need, those other 4 results to line up in order to make sure that becomes the case. Otherwise, you look at, Syracuse in a group with Duke and Harvard, and depending on those other results, it could be, 3 for 2 or maybe even 3 for 1.
So when you look at what has transpired the last few weeks with Syracuse, again, they're losing to good teams, including, you mentioned Duke and Harvard. They lost to both those teams this year, as you well know. They lost by 1 at home to Harvard and then lost on the road to Duke. They've closed out the year now with 3 straight losses after beating Notre Dame. What has gone on these last 3 weeks? Is it simply they're playing really good competition and 2 of them happen to be away from home? Is it more than that? Is there something you're concerned about, I guess, with this Syracuse team?
Well, certainly that narrative, and I don't use that in the pejorative word, right? Like we're talking about narratives. Like I think it's legitimate. Like they have not played as well away from home as they have in the Courier or in the JMA Wireless Dome, and so I think that is certainly one factor. But I think your point is well taken in the sense that they play good teams. I think the other factor is, these are kind of marginal results. And so, if one of them goes the other way, I think the way that you're thinking about how the regular season has ended is completely different. Based on what I have seen, I don't point to a particular aspect or area of the field that I feel like needs to be addressed. And sometimes when you diagnose what's wrong with the team, it's like, oh, if they can only get better goaltending or if they can only get better faceoffs, everything else falls into place. I don't think that that's the case with Syracuse. The way I see it is more so if each facet of the field plays 10% better, then now they're, in kind of the contention for a Final Four spot, which is where the expectations were for this team at the start of the season.
So I was going to ask you that. I mean, do you think that they are still capable of getting to Memorial Day weekend?
Absolutely. All you got to do is get in the dance. You hear the term peaking at the right time, and oftentimes you hear it right around this week. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think that if you're peaking now, it's far too early. For a team sport where the postseason is 3 weeks long or 4 weeks long, if you include the conference tournaments, you really need to peak in the quarterfinals so that you can carry your momentum into Memorial Day weekend. If you peak now, then that means that you're going to be out of gas by mid-May and you're going to lose in the quarterfinals. So I think that, they're still in a mode where a little bit of survive in advance, right? If they can get another, ACC quality win under their belt, then certainly that can make them feel a little bit more comfortable on Sunday, when they're watching the selection show at 9 p.m. But ultimately, as long as their season continues, they've got a week to improve, right? And they can find a way to get past the first round, and then they've got another week to improve. And so I think that's where the focus needs to be. Whoever wins the national championship is not right now as good as they will be in 3 weeks. And so the national championship is going to be determined by which team improves the most over the course of the next month.
At the moment, Cornell's sitting atop the polls, and we know quite a bit about Cornell being here in Central New York. When you look at the Big Red, Terry, do you look at them as the best team in the country? Are they number one in your mind as well going into the postseason? And if not, who else is kind of knocking on the door there?
They're number one in the sense that they have earned it and deserve it on the basis of what they've done so far this season. They're also number one in the sense that they have the best player. And, this isn't basketball. So the function of having the number one best player, isn't as much of a separating factor as it is in basketball, but it matters more than it might in even football or baseball. So it matters a lot. I think that the only kind of cause for concern is postseason experience. And there are a lot of guys in this team that were part of the, 2022 group that made it to the Final Four, but there is a team lurking out there that is back-to-back national champions in Notre Dame and has a lot of guys that were big contributors on both of those national championship teams. So I think the question, to answer your question, yeah, they're deserving number one, and right now they're the best team. Are they the likeliest to win a national championship? Well, I think that you kind of have to analyze exactly how bad you feel about the Irish in order to pick against them.
Is the Tewaaraton race over and done with? I assume it is, right? CJ Kirst, no matter what happens here on out, he's the guy?
I would say yes, and I think based on the last 10 years of history, that's probably true. But if you look at the full 25-year run of the award, there was a stretch around that late 2000s, early 2010s where the role of being the best player on the team that wins the championship was really important. And just imagine a scenario where Jackson Eicher is, I believe, the third leading scorer in college lacrosse right now at this point in the season, and Army makes a run to the national championship. Jackson Eicher is one of the 5 finalists. That comes out this coming week, right? So the week between the end of the regular season and the start of the tournament, the Tewaaraton committee announces its 5 finalists from which the award is chosen. And I expect Jackson Eicher will be one of those players. And if he is, then they're very reasonably, they might say, how do we not give it to this guy, right? Conversely, a guy like Chris Kavanaugh, who I also expect to be a finalist, if Notre Dame makes a run to the national championship game again and Cornell loses in the semifinals, yeah, I think what CJ has done, not just this year, but over the course of his career, is probably too much to separate on the basis of the production. And in that scenario, I would imagine that he would win.
I'm going to go a little bit off the board here, but I know you know everything about lacrosse. So I want to ask you one question about Lemoyne. A team that had been a Division II powerhouse for so many years, moved up to Division I, second year now in Division I, and they win a share of their conference crown. They played Detroit Mercy today in the semis of the NEC conference. I guess my question to you, Terry, is do you ever foresee a program like Lemoyne at a lower level conference being a factor come NCAA tournament time, or these one bid leagues is that just the height of their success? They plateau they win their conference tournament, they go into the NCAA, maybe they pull off an upset, but they're never a serious contender. Do you think we could ever see a day where a team like Lemoyne could become a program like a mid-major that could make some noise?
No question. I think just, mathematically, there are 11 conferences that play men's Division I, and they kind of neatly align as high major, mid major, low major. And so their high majors are, your ACC, Big Ten, probably the Ivy League. And then the mid majors would be the CAA, the Big East. And we've seen teams, and the Patriot League, I would put in that category as well. We've seen teams not just win NCAA tournament games from that group, but win national championships. So clearly the answer to that question is yes. When it comes to the low majors, and I think the NEC, the MAC, and the ASUN qualify, for the most part, I don't know of one, and I don't think any of them have won. I know certain that there has been no MAC team that has won an NCAA tournament game, but it is coming, and there have been very, very close calls. I remember there was a time when we never thought we would see a 16 seed beat a 1 seed in the men's basketball NCAA tournament, and then that happened. So yeah, I would say it's getting closer, and I think that there's a couple of factors around college sports that could be kind of inching us even toward that faster, right? If a 48 player roster cap goes into effect, I don't expect that it will, but if it were to, that would have the effect of democratizing, some of that high end talent across the rest of Division One, which would only go to increase the odds or likelihood that a program would benefit from that and put themselves in a position to ultimately, win a tournament game and then, make some noise in the quarterfinals.
All right, Terry, last question for you. We're on the eve of the ACC tournament here. I mentioned, Q's taking on Notre Dame in the 1-4 matchup. Handicap the ACC tournament for us. Who do you think wins and why?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's funny because I've always been a little bit of an ACC tournament hater in the sense that they don't play for an AQ. And so as a result, most of these coaches treat it like a burden. They basically only care about getting out of it as rested and uninjured as possible. And so I think that because especially since, these teams have played each other so recently, scouting is kind of all out of whack and everything like that. So because you asked, I'm going to pick Syracuse to beat Notre Dame in one semifinal. I think Carolina in the other, and then I'm going to go out on a limb because I'm on Syracuse radio, and I'll pick the Orange to beat the Tar Heels in the championship game on Sunday.
All right, you just made a lot of friends here in Central New York by making that pick, Terry. Great stuff. We love having you on. We love talking lacrosse with you. Get back to the games and enjoy your day of lacrosse, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, Terry Foy joining us here, CEO of Inside Lacrosse, and with that, we'll hit